How we doing, Bucs fans? This is Matt Matera from PewterReport.com checking in. There was some news the other day about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, your favorite football team. They signed a high number of players to futures contracts. It was 17 players off the jump. Then they added two more during the week, including a Canadian Football League punter. Will make some good competition for training camp in the 2025 season because we know the Bucs have had their issues with punters this season. But looking at the whole list of the players that signed those futures contracts, there are two in particular that jumped out to me because they could have an impact on how this roster looks for the 2025 season. Maybe not necessarily starters, but they will help shape out the roster. One of them is third string quarterback Michael Pratt, who played his college football over at Tulane. The Bucs were interested in Michael Pratt in the draft last year, but the Packers were the ones that ended up taking him. He did not make the roster out of training camp, so then the Bucs eventually signed him to the practice squad, got called up for a game or two to dress, but never got into a game. Now, the reason why it's important for Michael Pratt is because current backup quarterback Kyle Trask, who was a second-round pick in 2021, is going to be a free agent. So we don't know right now where it stands with how the Bucs feel about Kyle Trask. He backed up Tom Brady. He really was a third string because Blaine Gabbert was there as well. Lost the QB competition to Baker Mayfield and was his primary backup over the last two seasons. But it's not like Kyle Trask is going to be necessarily sought after by other teams. He's barely played. He's barely thrown any passes either. He has completed 4 passes on 11 attempts for 28 total yards. He's been in 7 total games, in his 3-year career. The most playing time he got was against the Atlanta Falcons a couple of years ago when the Bucs had already clinched the division. So it's not like the Bucs are not going to be able to afford Kyle Trask. What's his free agency market? Will other teams be interested in him because he was a second-round pick and he hasn't really proven that he can't do the job? He just hasn't really had opportunities, and he didn't accomplish his biggest opportunity, his biggest goal, which was beating out Baker Mayfield. So if Kyle Trask isn't back, that means Michael Pratt is the de facto number 2 quarterback behind Baker Mayfield, with obviously Baker being the starter and leading this team into next season. But what do you do if you're Tampa Bay? Do you believe in Michael Pratt? Do you think he can be QB2? Do you sign a veteran free agent quarterback that can come in and be your QB2? Does Kyle Trask return? Or do you draft another quarterback this year who you think you can mold into maybe an eventual starter, depending on how long Baker Mayfield is going to spend his career in Tampa, or someone that's a late-round pick, a little bit of a developmental project that could turn into a pretty good player down the road? We don't totally know because Michael Pratt is also a developmental project. So a lot of interesting things to consider. The other name that really intrigued me, and we saw him a little bit this season, especially in the playoff game, was veteran inside linebacker Dion Jones. And I understand Bucs fans are going to be upset with Dion Jones because he dropped that interception in the end zone. But you got to look at the overall picture for the Buccaneers going into the 2025 season. Dion Jones is pretty solid when it comes to pass coverage. He can still make some splash plays here and there. The games that he played in the regular season when he got called up from the practice squad were mostly special teams, but he did get 18 snaps on defense in that game against the Commanders. Looking at the Bucs inside linebacker room, there are a ton of question marks and a ton of things that need to be replaced. And let's remember that Dion Jones didn't join the team until December, so he hasn't been a problem all season long. We know and love Lavonte David, but we don't know if Lavonte David is going to be back next season. He's played 13 years in the NFL. He's getting up there in age. He's going to be a Bucs Ring of Honor member one day and hopefully a Hall of Famer. But we don't know if Lavonte David is coming back. He signed a number of one-year deals And if he wants to play, he'll return. But there's also a very good chance that this is the last time that we saw Levante David play in red and pewter, and he left it all out on the field, absolutely balling in that playoff game. So let's say Levante David isn't back. You have Dion Jones on a futures contract. Servassier Dennis is a very exciting player, but he gets hurt a good amount. He's been injured a lot over the last 2 years, only played in 4 games this season. I like what he can do, especially in that pass coverage and taking the ball away. But can you really trust and rely on him knowing the injury history of Servassier Dennis? KJ Britt, don't think he'll be back. We all saw the season that he just had. And JJ Russell, who really came in for KJ Britt, when he was really struggling, he's on a restricted contract. So he can come back and provide competition. But really, the big thing the Bucs are going to do this offseason, they're going to draft an inside linebacker, and they are going to sign an inside linebacker in free agency. So Dion Jones, I think, will be important, not to be a starter this next season, but if he's your 4th or 5th string inside linebacker and fitting because he wore number 45, I'm okay with that. I can live with it. At some point, you have to have solid depth. We learned that with the Bucs, especially on defense this year. Dion Jones should not be going into this season as the starting inside linebacker, but you could do a lot worse with a player with veteran experience who has made a lot of great plays in his career, being in there, being in the room, helping out some of the younger players, including Servassier Dennis, helping out the rookies that come in, and maybe he makes a play or two in specific packages covering in pass coverage and making plays. So those are my thoughts about the futures contracts that were signed by a number of Bucs players. Michael Pratt and Dion Jones are the most interesting to me. Those are my thoughts on this topic. Make sure you follow my social media at Matty4_Matera. And please follow pewterreport.com as well on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and all of that fun stuff. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we will see you soon. Out.